right. All right, we're on.
Here, cheers.
Cheers.
So you were saying that you just flew in from where?
Chengdu.
What were you doing?
I was doing a music video shoot, and I also doing a feature documentary shooting. So I go there every month for a few days and just tracking our characters and film for a few days and come back.
Cool. So Eric, so Fei and I have worked on some projects before, and so Fei's a cinematographer, and it's really interesting because besides working together, I mean, we're also obviously friends and stuff like that. But if you're not watching the video, one big thing that kind of pops out to a lot of other producers and other people in the industry is that she's a female. And
Really? Okay, yeah. Okay.
yeah. So basically, there's a lot of times, especially in the film industry, where people may have their first thought of what a cinematographer is. Maybe it's more of a male-dominated role, in historically speaking, and especially in China, where the gender role is a little bit kind of unbalanced, if you want to say that, right? So that's one of the biggest things that whenever I mention you to other people, if they don't know who you are, they usually say, "Oh, wow, she's a female DP. That's really cool." I mean, how does that make you feel? Is that kind of like weird, like when you hear that kind of stuff? Or?
I mean, I get that on every production pretty much. Like either like the producer was like, "Oh, it's cool," or they just like, "Oh, you're a girl." Like it can go either way.
Yeah, but how does that make you feel? Like, I mean, is that very, negative, or what do you think is a positive? Or
I wouldn't say negative. I would feel like, first of all, I was like, this is what I expected when I come back to China to decided to work as a cinematographer, because it is a very man-dominated industry and it is a very man-dominated role. So that's what I expected. But I still feel annoyed sometimes because this shouldn't be something that's so special in nowadays world, but it still is. It just makes me feel like I need to be better. I need to work harder and then make people to believe that it is not a weird thing or a unique thing that a woman can do this role.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's your background? So where were you? You said when you came back to China.
I was studying filmmaking in New York University, Tisch School of the Arts, Asia, but the campus was in Singapore. So I spent almost 5 years in Singapore, but in a piece of land that's like American education. But the school was built with students coming from multicultural background. So yeah, and Singapore is also a very, multicultural place.
Well, when you were studying filmmaking over there, did you feel that sort of imbalance when you were there, or?
I notice it, but I don't feel it on my everyday life. Because it was like, yeah, there's just not that obvious. And then people just always, because my cinematography teacher at school is actually a woman.
Oh, great.
And yeah, and also our cinematography teacher in New York campus is also a woman. So it was never an issue to me that a woman can do cinematography. And I actually had a meeting with, I remember I walked to her office one day. I was like, I want to, because in our class, in our school, it's like the first 2 years, you can just learn every aspect of filmmaking. And then third year, you can choose what aspect you want to emphasize on. And I emphasized on writing, directing, and cinematography. And I went to my teacher's office one day. I was like, can we have a talk? I was like, what does it feel like to be a woman working in the industry? Because I am aware of it. And then she told me, she's like, she's been working in the industry for like more than 30 years. And she said when she first started, there are like, there's a person who met her at the elevator and then said, what do you do? And she said, I'm a cinematographer. And then they said, you don't look like a cinematographer.
What does a cinematographer look like?
Exactly. But like 30 years later, she met the same person at another elevator. But then the person doesn't recognize her. The person asked her, what do you do? Mm-hmm. And she answered the same thing. She said, I'm a cinematographer. And the person still said, you don't look like a cinematographer. And I asked her, were you bothered? And then she said, if I'm like, even if I bother, what can I do? You know, like I still going on my everyday work and everyday life, and I still do the best I can. Like, you know.
So I know we just jumped kind of right into it, and this speaks a little bit to like stereotypes and stuff like that. And I think we all have probably experienced, you know, some type of stereotype, you know, in our lives. And you know, as you know, we've got. I think in the last couple of shows, we've talked a little bit about some of the movements that are happening in the U.S. and sort of around the world, but just kind of stepping back a little bit, because I don't know anything about, honestly, like I know nothing about film and cinematography. So, and, you know, perhaps some of our audience, you know, they see the end product and stuff like that, but just kind of stepping back a little bit, I'd like to know a little bit more about you, Fei. Just like, where'd you grow up? You know, you speak really amazing English. Sounds like you're very talented. Like you're pursuing a passion in an industry that might be dominated by, you know, people, you know, from different backgrounds. But just backing up a little bit, tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit. I know Howie knows you really well, but we've met a couple of times. But just maybe share a little bit about like who you are.
Right. I born and grew up in Hangzhou.
Oh, Hangzhou.
Yeah, and I studied journalism in undergrad in Hangzhou.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually interned when I was studying for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the interning, like as a journalist for like social issues, like social news, I learned that I can't tell the truth all the time as a journalist working in China.
You can't.
I cannot.
Oh, okay.
And
well, we try not to tell the truth too much on this show.
Is that a shock?
Okay, so
No, just like I would love to tell the story in a very, how do you say that? A fair objective perspective. But sometimes I feel like my words are being held back, and I don't agree that's what a journalist should be. So at that time, I was the last year in my college, and I was thinking, what should I do? Like, if I want to pursue a career as a journalist, I'm gonna have a lot of conflict in my head every day. And then I had an opportunity back then. I was very blessed to have an opportunity to do exchange program to UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, for a summer. And I was able to choose any class that I want to. So I picked Filmmaking 101 because I always loved movies. But I always feel like it's a job that, it's a career that it's too far away. It's only like people who are privileged enough to be able to pursue filmmaking. So I was like, oh, I'm only here, you know, for exchange program. Why don't I just take the class and have fun? You know, and actually I had a lot of fun. And I had a lot of encouragement from my professor and my classmate back then. And I already made like small documentary as in my journalism class. Oh, wow. So I showed my work. They're like, oh, anyone wants to show your work? I was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Okay, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And I showed them my work at class. They couldn't understand the movie in Chinese because it's all Chinese. But then they, like, my teacher and my classmate are like, they still loved it in a way. And then they think I should try to pursue what I like. So I feel encouraged. And I called my parents and my friends back in China. I was like, oh, I think I want to try to do film. And then they're like, how are you going to do that? Like, we don't know anyone who works in the industry. And you're probably not going to make money being an artist. You know, we're not going to, like, support you after you're, like, still 30 or something. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how to break into the industry, but there's school I can go to. And then they're like, how are you going to go to school? You're already, like, about to graduate in undergrad. You're old enough to, like, go work and make money. And, like, a master degree in the States or in Europe is very expensive. And I was like, but I really wanted to try that. If I just go out and get an ordinary job and make money, I don't think I'll be happy. So I struggled. And then eventually my mom was like, I think you should try to at least try to apply, and then we'll see how it goes. And like until then, everybody should shut up and let her be.
Wow, strong move.
Yeah.
Well, that's powerful. That's really powerful. I have a million questions. I'm trying to hold myself back because what you just said was so so powerful.
Yeah.
I will ask a couple, but I know Howie also has a lot on his mind as well. You mentioned that you studied, you got into journalism, right? And then you felt like maybe you couldn't really express sort of like this objective view of the world, et cetera, right? Do you know what the name of our podcast is called?
The Honest Drake.
Okay, anyways, this show's going to be censored, but it's okay.
I'm probably be censored.
You like, all right, listeners, this might be our last show ever. Sorry, Justin. we crashed a car. We crashed it. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm curious, like the film stuff, obviously the stuff I'm super interested in, but like journalism, like how does that work in China? Like how do you decide what major to study in university? Like in a US it's a little bit different, right? Like we actually just like, oh, I want to do this, and then you just do it, right? But what about in China?
In China you have to take a gaokao, which is like an entry test to
Like SAT?
college. Yeah, like a SAT.
Like on crack.
Well, SAT is what, like 3 hours?
But gaokao is like 3 days.
Yeah, it's like gaokao is
It's intense.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you don't mess with that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really intense. It pretty much decide your life.
Your
on
life.
It's crazy.
Wow.
I can't imagine.
Well, you're obviously doing good. You're on the honest drink right now. You're doing pretty fucking good.
I'm honored. But back in high school, I was actually I have terrible grades.
Really?
I was really bad.
Journalism is where they go with bad grades.
Yeah, I failed math.
I pretty much didn't have any options when I was picking my major. I was like, oh, but I love writing. I love literature. I love movies, stories.
You're just too artsy. You got to go that way. It's not about numbers and.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, like, when I was in high school, in China, in high school, you can choose 文科 or 理科. It's like, it's more technique or like more science or more literature. Everybody think I should be more literature, but I
文科,
choose
right?
to go more science. I just don't want people to define me that way, even though I'm actually good at literature.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, like it's a parallel theme, right? Like from the elevator story to, like what your parents were saying when you told them you wanted to study film, to even choosing a major. It's like everyone's pushing you in a direction that's like that runs counter to like what you believe in. And that's really, why do you think that's like the case in China? Like, because I got that as well. Even after my parents moved to the US, they still held on to that. Why do you think that's the case?
I think parents always want the best for their children. And
From their perspective.
But they don't know what's the best.
Yeah.
And I think China has a lot of people, and it's very competitive. And then China actually suffered a lot from the past, from like poverty and then the war. So people consider a happy life as a peaceful, stable life. So like taking adventure is something that you will think about after you have a backup plan.
Because you can afford to take that adventure.
Exactly.
But until then, stop thinking about the adventure.
Yeah, because there are consequences. Like if you have responsibility, don't fuck it up. But I think I'm fortunate enough to grow up in a family that my parents always give me the freedom. They try to give me the freedom, and then they try to understand me and then the world that I see. And then they try, even today, they're still trying to, they're very, very supportive. Even they don't understand about filmmaking in the beginning. They don't understand what I'm doing. Like I just remember like when I started doing journalism, my dad will start to buy me all these journalism books. Although I'm like, I don't need them. And then when I started like study filmmaking, he will buy me all these filmmaking books. And I'm like, Dad, that's not even a filmmaking book. It just has 电影 on it, It's not even actually a filmmaking
It's like the movie theater like showings.
Yeah. But they're just like so passionate and supportive of whatever I want to do. And then even when I had a hard time in school, I remember like my teacher would call my mom like to the school and be like, your daughter is doing like terrible things. She needs to like, catch up on her grades. And I was expecting to come home and got yelled at. But instead of I come home, my mom just like made me delicious dinner and let me chill.
I think that's really rare, though. Like, I think your situation. Do you think that's rare to have that type of support system?
I think I'm lucky.
Yeah.
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 That's amazing. If you listen to some of our past episodes, our teachers would praise us and we still go home and get our asses kicked. So,
Oh, no.
like, so, you know what? It's funny. I don't want to digress too much, but when I tell my friends, colleagues who grew up in China about my upbringing, they literally like can't believe it. They're like, what the fuck? They're like, I don't know what generation you came from. Like, we didn't grow up like that. Like, your parents lived in some time capsule of like berating, like, you know.
Well, I also think you're an anomaly. You know, like your situation is an anomaly as well.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But I think there's more and more parents who is open-minded nowadays.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the younger generation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much my generation now is becoming the next generation of parents. So like we don't want our children to go through what we've been go through.
How would you, so, I mean, I know this is typically a sensitive question for young women, but what generation are you?
I'm 32.
Oh, it's a very young generation. So what is that like considered like? Is there a name for it in China? Are you like a millennial or like a Gen? What letter are you on right now?
I think it's millennial.
Millennial. But I'm a little bit older.
Because Gen Z is like
For
is like
millennial.
is 90后, right?
Yeah, millennial is more like 90后, no?
Oh,
Shit, I don't get it right.
so you're
Actually, I
on the
don't
border.
know.
You're kind of the border of the 90后s.
Yeah, kind of.
Because we're Gen X, right?
What is
I don't
Gen
know what
X?
you are, dude.
Well, anyway,
Yeah, I'm Gen M for mystery.
you're even older than that, huh?
So you grew up and then you just like, were you a very headstrong girl? Like did you do your own thing or were you like guai? Like guai meaning what? How do we describe guai? Like the word guai in Chinese? Like obedient?
What's guai in Chinese? Guai
No,
is
no,
already
guai in
Chinese.
English. Obedient.
Like a goody,
A goody
girl.
goody.
Like
yeah,
a good girl.
Mhm. Were you a good girl or were you just like crazy?
I think I was a good girl with a rebel heart, but I wasn't be able to be so crazy in my in my like teenage.
What was the most rebellious thing you ever did before you were 18?
Wow, to think about it. I guess it's more like I choose to take the science more than the literature. And I actually fucked up.
Then you got stuck with journalism.
Yeah, then I got stuck with journalism. Exactly.
Well, I think just in general, the path that you've put yourself on and still on, that shows that rebel heart that you have.
Yeah.
Because it's going against the norm. You know, just because you're going against the norm doesn't mean you're going to be doing bad things.
Yeah.
It just means that it's not the majority. You know, the majority way of thinking.
Also, I think I was trying to find out who I am in a very young age. And I was lucky enough that I met good teacher at my young age, like in middle school or even elementary school. There are teachers who guide me, that give me the freedom. Like I have this amazing teacher in middle school that she would even call my parents to tell them, do not hold on to my hobby, do not like cut my hobby just to make time for me to study. Like she would also call my classmates' parents to say that because she believed, because I heard a story very recently that one of my best friends that he really into soccer back then, so he would like subscribe to a lot of like magazines and newspapers, and then his mom was worried that reading all these magazines and newspaper would affect his grades. So he wrote about that because this teacher is my 语文老师, how to say that, literature. Yeah, so we will write 作文, like articles every weekend, and then she always encouraged us to write the true story, the true life. She's like, you should never write something just for the 考试, for the test. And then my best friend actually wrote about her mom's concern of him reading the magazines will affect his grades in in like the weekly article, in the weekly essay. And then the teacher read the essay, and then she called his mom and said, I believe it won't affect his grades. And I believe have hobbies for a teenage at this time will actually make his life happier.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so I feel lucky that I have teachers like this in my young age, and actually it affects our parents as well.
So I want to ask you, because maybe this is your answer, but I was going to ask you because we just mentioned that that rebel heart has allowed you to, go forward with what you really want to do and achieve. What was the catalyst? Like, because that may not be the common road that people go on. So what was the catalyst? What was the thing that made you, I don't know, even have that thought?
What's catalyst?
Like, it's like, what happens in your life, or someone you met, or something you went through that made you be like, whoa, this is what I want to do.
Maybe it's catalyst. I'm trying to think. Howie and I, our Chinese isn't so good, but like 就是什么方面的触动你?
Oh. For what in general?
Yeah, just to get you on this
like,
path.
why weren't you like every other Heids? It was just like, just very plain, boring. Just do whatever your parents, like what the society wants. Like, why did you sort of have a different voice? Like you said, you're a good girl with a rebel heart, but obviously in China, I don't think like everyone has a rebel, like rebel heart, right? So like, what made you have the rebel heart?
I think it's just little things all adds up together. Like I remember when I was like 7 or 9, I watched this like popular TV show like 射雕英雄传. I was really admired of the lead actress who can play like 古筝. And I told my parents, I want to learn 古筝. And then they're like, that's fucking expensive. But fine, we'll make you learn it. And I learned, and I learned it for many years, and I got bored. And then they're like, they didn't force me to continue. They're just like, okay, fine, you're bored, then move on to something else,
Sounds like it's like because that she had that right family support system to sort of cultivate that way of thinking, allowed her to explore different avenues of thought and right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out too,
Yeah.
actually.
Well, I think it's super inspiring because, like, I mean, when I hear the way you describe teachers, because when people think about China from outside of China, I bet you the first thing they don't think about is that they're incredibly inspiring teachers that encourage you to do what you want to do, right?
Sure.
And I bet you don't think about teachers that say, don't worry about the grade that you made on your test. It's really about like what you learned. Or, I bet they don't think about go pursue soccer. It's not going to impact your grades. So that doesn't come up. Like, that's not our perception of China. No one thinks that. So it's really inspiring to hear that in China, there are teachers that nurture people's passion. And I guess like when you really think and zoom out a little bit, 5,000 years, like China's a great country for a reason, is that there's a lot of really inspiring, educators. And then you go back to sort of your family, and it's interesting that you talked about a TV show. Like media, film, TV is like so inspiring, right? So I think one question that I had in my head was like, okay, so you decided to be a filmmaker, cinematographer, all this stuff, right? But at 7 years old, you're watching this TV show. Like, what were some of the films or TV shows that you watched when you were a kid that that left a big impression? Like, did you have access to Western media back then? Because like even our podcast is like, is something where we're trying to touch audiences here in China that can understand. There's so many people, a lot of people understand English. Like, we're trying to see, what kind of people can we bring on the show to connect with our audience, right? So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around that.
So my very first movies that I watched was Winnie the Pooh and 101 Dalmatian Dogs.
Oh, Disney.
Because I had this 2 VHS tapes that was given as a gift from my aunt from the States. So my uncle actually went study abroad, and then he stayed there, and then my aunt is American. So back then, like, I remember I was like 3 or something, 4. I would watch these tapes over and over again. And then there's no subtitles. Even there's subtitle, I won't be able to read it. So I would just be like watching like American animation, like Disney cartoons, over and over. And I picked up some words. I know how to say like, "Mom, I'm so hungry, I can eat an elephant." You know,
That's the one thing you pick out of that.
because this is really cute, chubby little, dog, and I'd be like, "Mom, I'm so hungry."
Fei, so every time I come on this show, this is a funny running joke. The first question I ask Howie and Justin is like, "Are you guys hungry? 肚子饿了吗?" And then they're like, "No." And then I'm like, "I'm so hungry. I could eat like an elephant." Because I always get hungry. But
That's
today
true.
I ate before the show. That's so fascinating because I don't know if you had a chance to listen to one of our previous guests recently, but a guy named Ben Cavender, he's kind of like a very smart guy. He runs a market research company in China, and they help Fortune 500 companies navigate the China business environment. He's American, and one of the things he said was really powerful. He said, one thing the U.S. is good at is it's the best at exporting culture. And so the fact that you watch 2 VHS tapes, and maybe that is one of the catalysts, right, to drive you to one day become like an incredible filmmaker. It could just be like Winnie the Pooh, which is crazy. Like 2 fucking VHS tapes. And like, I love Winnie the Pooh. I had Tigger and Winnie the Pooh, little Xiong, right? Little whatchamacallits, stuffed animals. And I loved those. Those were my 2 favorite stuffed animals. And so can you imagine that age-wise, we're probably not too far apart. But
How old are you?
That's a mystery. Generation M. But we share so much in common. Like, we felt the same emotions.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. And now I think about it, all these films, it's actually about friendship, love, and justice. And that's what I felt deeply rooted in my heart, that I would fight for it every day.
Well, yeah, Disney films, those kind of films definitely, besides just, very good, straightforward storytelling, but there's always got a good message behind it, and, you're taking away those couple of those messages and almost using that and turning that into your own value system, which is really interesting, and we talk about that a lot as well, the whole, what is your own value system? Are you clear on what your value system is? Because that will dictate the decisions you make and the direction you choose, right?
Yeah. And it's important to like have these kind of influence in young age. Like, even I don't have children, but like right now I have nieces and nephews who are very young age. Like, I would always try to give them books or movies or music that is beautiful things that they could read and enjoy it at that age, because I believe that's something that make me how do I say that, like, ground me and stable me when I'm in doubts as an adult. So I wanted to give them this kind of thing when they're at
like
age.
these stories. I think people have been telling stories for I don't know how long. I can't remember. It's like 30,000 or 50,000 years. We've only been writing things down for a couple of thousand years. And so if you think about how we transferred knowledge and culture, it's through stories. So like storytelling is super duper, powerful. And you had these stories that kind of influence you, and now you want to share it with your family. And it's really interesting because you're now like that generation of filmmakers. Like, you're going to be doing the Winnie the Poohs of, I guess, modern times. And we can tell different stories. We can tell like really, kind of negative stories, which we see a lot in the media, or we can tell positive stories that will help, the next generation. You mentioned that film that you made when you went to UCLA. It was all in Chinese and stuff like that. I'm curious what that film was all about.
That film was a documentary about the taekwondo team in my college to prepare for a challenge upcoming game. And I was part of the team. So I kind of just filmed my teammates.
Taekwondo?
Taekwondo.
You mean like fighting?
Yeah.
Something Howie was almost a national champion in many years ago.
Yes.
Oh, so you were kicking ass back in the day, huh?
I was watching, I think it was 2000 Sydney Olympic. And then that was the first time China won the golden medal in female taekwondo. and I was very inspired. I was like, I want to learn it. And I went to, it was very hot. I remember it was very hot summer day. I went on my bike and I went to like all these so-called training places, like club, to ask if there is a taekwondo training like for me.
That's crazy.
And
Did you get rejected or did you get
They don't
accepted?
have one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't have one. I think I only get to actually practice was like 2 years or 3 years later. I think it was 3 years later.
Well, taekwondo is
2003.
not very it was not very popular here, right?
It only gets popular after Chen Zong, which is the athlete back then. She won a golden medal. And I was so inspired. I was watching. I was like, yes, I wanna be like her.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know. I have small legs. I have short legs. I don't think I can like be like her, but I just like so admired her. She's very 霸气. You know.
Wow, that's amazing. So like if you were in the elevator like, hey, you don't look like a cinematographer, you kick him in the head like, but do I look like a taekwondo fighter, motherfucker? So your life has been dominated by images. By images and symbols and by inspirational people, which is really inspiring, I think, to hear how, you know, exposure to these things completely sort of changes the direction of your life a little bit. So basically, the people in UCLA, they couldn't understand the film, but they just saw a lot of people getting their ass whooped, and they're like, "Oh, cool! You probably should do film. Like, we're not going to stop you."
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I thought it was kind of the movie was a bit lame because you know, like we didn't have good camera, and I was editing on this like crappy software for editing like journalism program. But then I've never received so much courage. I think it's a culture difference. You know, you go to California, everybody was like, oh my God, you're amazing. And here they're always like, oh, you could have done better.
Well, okay, so that's a big difference, right, from the different cultures. I mean, in general, the Western culture is all about, you know, positive feedback. You know, oh, you're great. You know, you already tried your best and that kind of stuff, right? But like, you know, in China, it's about criticism, right? It's like you can do better. You know, this is not good enough. I mean, that's a generalization, but I feel like it's it's a pretty accurate generalization when you speak to most people. So, do you feel like that's pretty accurate in terms of the Western and Chinese way of thinking?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think that? I mean, how much do you think that affects, like, you know, growing up in China? If you don't have much positive reinforcement, like, how do you think that affects you?
Back then, it doesn't feel like positive or negative. It just feel like that's how the way is. You know, like you just have to work hard, get your grades better, and try to go to a better college. There's nothing wrong about it.
You know what's interesting? I had this conversation recently on a shoot, and basically, I'm telling you this story because you can probably relate. So Vimeo is a Western like video site where creatives will put up videos. In China, there's a website called 芯片厂. And so it's funny because I've noticed that when you go on Vimeo and like a creator puts up a video, if you look at comments, in general, the comments are like, wow, this is superb, this is great, this is amazing, how'd you do this, how'd you do that, that's amazing, blah, 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 all very positive. On 芯片厂, you get the positive as well, but then you get all these like random like couch critiques, and it's all like really weird like criticisms, like random stupid criticisms.
Keyboard warriors.
Yeah. But like really stupid, you know? And then I was asking somebody who's Australian educated but Chinese. I was like, so, you know, why do you think that happens? Because it's just really weird. Like, why does that happen so much? And then he just said, he was like, well, in my opinion, it's just that, you know, they don't mean bad. It's just that that's what they know. It's like they grow up always being criticized in order to be better. So it's almost like they're criticizing you because they want you to be better. So that could be one way of thinking. The other, because I was like, are they just jealous? Is it just like this, you know, like, you know, I don't get it. But yeah, that was.
Well, I mean, it's a great point. Like, you know, I've always viewed this thing, you know, coming from an environment where, you know, I received a lot of criticism, and then, you know, growing up and then meeting more friends, and I've, you know, like I've surrounded my friends generally with positive people, like Howie, you know, like if you look at my friend base, they're all like, hey, like we can do more, like, you know, you're great, you're fine, like let's do this all together. And so I've kind of surrounded myself with people that challenge themselves but are quite positive. But it's helped me, like what you just said, helps me think about criticism in a different way. Because if criticism is coming from a good place, you feel that. And so when I think back and I talk to my parents now, and even though there are some, I guess, memories where they weren't so positive, I knew they, kind of had the best in mind. And what you were saying, right, Faye, is like, parents want the best for you. And then you look at sort of like what's happening in the US and the criticism and the polarization. People are not criticizing people in a way that wants to build the other side up. They're criticizing people to tear them down. And so it's really interesting that criticism itself can come in different forms, and it's really based on that intention. And so you didn't really know if it was positive. Like, you didn't know this was like kind of a negative or positive thing. You just knew that, hey, this was something that I needed to do to be successful. So it's really interesting that if you kind of frame it in that way, what's happening in the US right now, that is a bad kind of criticism, because each side is just trying to tear each other apart.
But this just reminds me, there's an interesting about criticism in Chinese society. It's like we're so 怎么说严格?
Strict.
We're so strict on individuals, but then you see these newses about like men raping young age girl, or like teacher, force the student to jump off the building, or like there's like things that's ridiculous, but it doesn't receive criticism as much as it should be from the society itself. But China is such a nation that criticism is so deeply rooted in our culture, that because there's two ways you can get someone to get better, right? You can criticize them to evoke them to get better, or you can give them courage so they get inspired and get better. But I feel like these two things doesn't really result well in our culture right now. But I think the younger generation is trying. Like, I see more and more people voice out, and then to say this is wrong, you should do the right thing. But when I grow up, it's very frustrating. It's also the time when I was doing journalism that was very frustrating to me.
That is a very good point. I mean, what you just said counterbalances what I said earlier. What you're basically saying is that to have the courage and, sort of the authenticity to come out and say this is wrong or this is bad is also something really important. And in a way, some of the stuff happening in the US again mirrors that, because people are coming out and saying, hey, look, we have been treated, or people have been treated unfairly for hundreds of years. We're not going to stand for that shit anymore. That is wrong. And they call shit out. And so I think this, this notion of call out culture can, kind of go on both sides. But, on a positive note, people create change by criticism as well.
Exactly.
So I think you see both sides now, right? It's just like there's no good and bad. It's just like whenever you have it's like we talked a couple of episodes ago about like the tale of two systems. There's no perfect system. There really isn't a perfect system. The system is rooted in culture and history and heritage and how people are. And but it's really fascinating. And one of the things that we started the show, or what we realized in doing this show, is that if we bring people on with different perspectives, we can learn a lot from that, because you just can't see the other side unless you talk to people that have lived that particular perspective. So it's really fascinating what you're saying, is that, this notion of criticism, I hadn't thought of that. I always viewed criticism as a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing for nowadays. Like, we need more positive criticism, if you can say it that way.
So, coming from or what you just said, Eric, positive criticism, right? Hopefully, through positive criticism, we can have some sort of change, positive change come out of it, right? Yeah. Some kind of progression. One thing that I'm curious about, just going back to, when we kind of jumped in right away with what you do, and plus your gender, right? When you meet other people in the industry that may be a little bit more small-minded, you know, and when they approach you as a female cinematographer, because like for people who don't know, a director of photography or cinematographer, they're one of like the main creatives in creating a film. And so they have people under them that have to listen. It's like upper management, right? You know what I mean?
老板.
Yeah, it's like upper management, senior management, you know? So there's a whole team of people underneath them that has to listen to them. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm going to assume that, you know, with that kind of role, I'm sure you've had some people that kind of either challenged that or came in with some sort of weird comments or like they made you feel uncomfortable. I'm sure there's stuff because you've shared some stories with me before, you know, and I would love to hear some of these like kind of these
你
moments.
看上去好像不是 cinematographer. 看不出来嘛.
You know the other
And then you're like Taekwondo, motherfucker.
You know, the other question that I always get when I go on a production is they will ask me like, "Oh, you're a girl. Will you be able to lift up camera?" I got that question all the time.
What do you say? You're like, oh no, actually, you lift up the camera for me because I'm your 老板 bitch.
I think this is the point that it's important to form a team that back me up, that supports me, that can tell the person that she doesn't have to lift up on herself because she got assistance. Or they will be like, she can lift you up if she wants to. It's not in your concern.
What's Howie's role, by the way, on this? Is he one of the
He's
assistants?
just my boss.
Oh, he's the boss. Or the assistant.
I'm the assistant.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to get at is because we're talking about positive criticism, right? So I'm saying like when you're in these kind of situations, like where does positive criticism come in those type of situations? You know, so I wanted to hear a couple of like moments that maybe you've had and maybe where positive criticism maybe would be able to improve maybe future collaborations or even the industry itself.
I have a story that I can't say it's positive criticism, but you guys can tell me what it can be called. So that's like the first time, after I come back to China, I got offered to shoot a very low budget independent feature film. So I flew to Chongqing and I got into this hotel everybody lives, and I met my line producer, who is kind of like a senior 50-year-old man.
Line producer 就是执行方面的
Yeah,
一
it's
个
like
制片人。
the main manager or something. Like he's higher level than me. And then he saw me. He's like, "Wow, you're a girl. You got a lot of workout to do throughout this production." And I didn't say anything. I just smiled and I go back to my room, you know. And then this film was very challenging because we filmed for a whole month, and it's a lot of handheld. And then back then the camera was not that small yet.
Very heavy.
And it's the shooting condition was very tough because we're like either deep down in a cave with like cold water, or we're like up on a mountain living in a village with no hot water. It's just very tough conditions.
Like rough.
Like very rough. Yeah. And and then after 30 days we wrapped, and then we were just like having a wrap dinner, and then this guy walked up to me. And then he 他伸出他的手, like he gave me a thumb up. And then he said, "I thought you will clap, but actually every minute that you're being the best of you, and I'm inspired." So I feel like that experience taught me that it's not about when people challenge me, like to say something back or an argument is not going to be any helpful. All I can do is be the best of me, and then to prove it. Even if after they see my work, they still don't believe it, then fine.
That's their problem, not yours.
It's their problem. It's not mine.
One of the things, you know, so as you were telling the story, my unconscious bias, and this is something that I think about all the time, unconscious bias, actually came out. And I was like, in my mind, I was taking this almost like a victim mentality, right? And I was like, okay, that motherfucker came up, thumbs up, whatever. And I was like, fuck you, right? But you were actually much more generous and much more confident. And you didn't jump to conclusions. So that, because the guy probably isn't just thinking you're a female, right? Like the guy basically is thinking anyone that has a certain type of diminutive stature, and the role itself has to carry some large object. Like, so if I went there and I'm kind of skinny, he might think the same thing. So a lot of times like these things are in our head a little bit, and then we put ideas into our own head and say, oh, it's just because I'm a female, it's just because I'm Asian or whatever it is. And you said something, your composure. You said, I didn't say anything. I just went back to my room, did my thing, right? So you actually did not fight fire with fire. And you paused and you said, okay, I don't know what this guy's really thinking, but I'm not going to be like that, whatever he's thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be open-minded. Let's see how this thing plays out. And in the end, the guy was like actually a bigger guy. And maybe in the beginning he was a dick, who knows? But by the end he came around, he learned something. And the next time he sees a, person, female, whatever it is, that he immediately judges as doesn't have that 条件, right? He's going to think different. So you actually did something that it's so powerful. I mean, it's so fucking powerful. It's inspiring.
But I think that's all because all these inspiring women that I had in my life that has impacted me to have that immediate reaction.
I think going back again, what Eric said is I really want to reiterate that, because that way of thinking is so important, because it's so easy to fight fire with fire.
It's so easy to get defensive and be a victim, and then panic, and then just fucking throw the atomic bomb.
Yeah, because the minute, because we were just talking before you came here, we were talking about empathy, right? EQ, right? 情商, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you have like a higher EQ, higher 情商, like you can think about like, okay, well maybe that guy just hasn't been around it, so he doesn't understand or he doesn't know. It doesn't mean that he's a hater. It doesn't mean that he's an asshole.
Yeah.
He just doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you proved and you showed him, and he took it, and luckily he has a little bit of a little bit of open-mindedness to be able to come back and learn from it and be like, wow, okay, wow, you proved me wrong. I mean, that's the only thing you can do is give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. There's going to be assholes in this world.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
But it doesn't have to be adversarial.
Yeah.
Right? Like probably 5% of the population, it has to be adversarial. You don't have to fight everyone. And you don't have to think about those 5% of people, you fight them. The rest of the people, they're just normal people. They don't want it. They just don't know any better. And think about what you would do. Let's say that you were, let's fast forward 20 years, right? You're 50 something. You're well known. At that point in the world, like women cinematographers, like they're already superior to men because their EQ is so much higher. So basically, like if you're a man in the elevator and you're a cinematographer, people are like, oh, you kind of cinematographer. So at that point, if you did meet someone who doubted you, you wouldn't even think about these things. You'd just be like, okay, that guy's kind of just 不成熟, not mature. And so almost like you, just by playing the role of like, hey, I know what I'm doing, that's all you have to do. It's the people who panic and go do something extreme that end up proving their inexperience and their lack of, their lack of expertise.
But I have to say there are still times that I got annoyed, that I don't know how to shake off that annoyedness. And I think that is the time it's important that I have other women that I can talk to. And then they share their empathy on me, and then which helped me to get through it. Because I was talking to, I have like a group amazing girlfriends who are all independent, powerful women. That there's one day I met like a guy in a bar, and then he claimed he's a director, and then my friend introduced me and said, oh, she's a cinematographer, and he's a bit drunk, and his first reaction was, but she's a girl.
Really?
And I'm like, fine, this guy is drunk, fine, this guy is being sexist, I shouldn't be annoyed, but I am annoyed. I came home, I couldn't sleep. I regret I didn't say something back. I regret I don't know what to do with him. I'm annoyed that I can't deal with my emotion at that moment. And I'm like, what do? I can't just run to this guy and be like, hey, you're wrong. And I can't prove him because I'm not working with him. Or I can't just be like, hey, come to my set and see how I work, Like if that's something that deeply rooted in his opinion, then he's going to believe that like all the time. And discussion with him or trying to talk him through is not going to do anything to him. So I I don't know how to deal with that. Like I had a very tedious night that night. I just couldn't go to sleep.
Well, I think that's, I mean, personally, my reaction to that is, you know, you already mentioned that you want to surround yourself with other females that may be going through something similar. You can have a support system that
Not
kind
only females, also men who are supporting.
exactly. That's what I was going to
equality.
get to. So, you know, beyond that, you also need to have these men that
Yeah.
are open to it.
Exactly.
You know, and part of that is, I mean, as a male speaking to the rest of the males that are listening, you got to be more open-minded out there, guys. You know, because like, I mean, for example, for me, you know, I've had a situation, I've never told you this, but when I'm having drinks or on a set with other producers and they're asking me about, you know, cinematographers I work with, and I'll mention you. And then I'll be like, yeah, she's a female cinematographer. They'd be like, really? You work with a female cinematographer? I mean, she can do a good job? I'm like, forget about the sex. Yeah, of course she does a good job. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working with her, you know? And then, like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, well, it's not cool. I mean, she does a good job. I mean, she gets booked on jobs that I think she's going to kill. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's normal. It's not about she's a female or male, you know? But I try to be supportive of that. But I think in
Yeah.
general, more men need to be that way
Yeah,
too.
he for she is important.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
That's wow. That's very powerful as well. Cause you know, sometimes, you know, like you might meet someone who's just so overtly sexist or racist. You can just discount them.
Yeah,
and
just-
you can just be like, you don't even bother me
Yeah.
because you're so shabby.
Yeah. It's like
Right?
it
Yeah.
exceeds that threshold of,
Yeah.
you know, your patience.
For our Western listeners, shabby means, it's kind of a dirty word, but it basically means like a fucking retard. But
Let's be more politically correct.
yeah, like a
An
fucking,
idiot.
so sorry. Yes, an idiot. Okay. Yeah. Anyways.
But
Yeah. No.
But I think it's not only about women. You know, there's
So bad.
also like equality for men as well. Because like there is a stereotype of what a man should be. Like a man can cry. A man has to have muscle. A man can't have emotion. That's all wrong.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. It's like if you ask Siri, are you a feminist? Siri will be, I support equality. And so I think the world just needs to be more
Yeah.
包容, 怎么说?
Well,
Tolerance.
Borrow means inclusive.
Inclusive.
Yeah, inclusive and diverse as
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of that.
And have compassion.
And compassion. I totally agree.
So, I mean, what you just said, I think is a good quick discussion that I think we can kind of talk about. Is trying to talk here, man. You pour yourself, man. Anyway, whatever.
You know, I'm gonna have to call out that's a party foul. Because
So,
you're sitting. Hold on, I'm gonna have to just put the brakes on this. You are sitting in the special seat, okay?
I know, right?
Because-
He's not even on
yeah.
camera.
Yeah,
on camera.
no, he's on camera, but that's
he
a
is on
special
camera.
seat. Basically, that is like the
Bartender.
line producer.
Oh, the
okay?
line producer.
And the line producer has to be ultra aware of the situation, and all cups need to be filled. I've never sat in this seat with the other head of the show where the cup was ever, and then you're like, oh, it's it's like,
So rude.
I mean, I don't know. Anyways, Mr. Yang, when you come back, you have to 教训, okay?
Shout out.
Yang.
So I kind of want to go back to what you were saying before, because like the idea of feminism, right, is I mean, obviously it's globally, but especially in the States, United States of America, it's a hot topic, right? But what you just said, like it works both ways. You know, the stereotypes of men are just as important, maybe not just as important, but are also important, right? And because you have like a common argument from feminists versus people who are maybe not so supportive of the feminist movement. A very common conversation is, let's say a feminist goes, there should be, like, for our career, let's say we need more female directors or female, DPs, So, we need to have a lot more of that support of that. But then maybe the anti-person or someone who's not as sensitive to that would come in and be like, well, there's just not enough of you guys. So, why should it be like that? You know what I mean? Let's go with like ratios. You know what I mean? But where you're coming in is like, well, maybe, but you also have, let's say the nursing industry where you have like majority of females as nurses, but the guys want to be nurses too. So that you should be supportive of that as well. So that's the discussion where it's kind of like a gray area because you have people from both sides coming in with their perspective. So what do you think about that?
I think it's about giving the equal opportunity first. If you say, okay, this job is open to men and women, and then the judgment won't be affected by sex, then if the result is there is less women than men, then fine. It is our fault. There's not enough of us, But if it's from the beginning, it's not equal, then of course we should fight for the opportunity at beginning.
But how do you control that though?
I can't control that.
Do you think maybe it's more about through this education of, let's say, quote unquote feminism and support of women, working in different career paths that are, generally speaking, more male dominated, but just by getting that out there, it's actually showing a new generation of people, of women that be like, I can do that. As opposed to before, they're like, maybe it's a very 小众, like small group of people that would think, I want to be a cinematographer, I want to be a director, I want to be, whatever, that's more male dominated. But if they see more of the women in that role, then maybe you will have a huge generation of people that come in that's going to be a little bit more fair as in a ratio, right? Maybe that's the bigger picture.
I think they need more exposure. That's an interesting time to talk about this topic right now because there's this reality show in China that's very popular. 乘风破浪的姐姐.
What's that? 解释一下就是大概.
I haven't seen it, but I read about it. It's about all these famous actresses in China. They're at their 40s or 50s even. They were so popular before. And then, because, before the concept of 女团, like a group of young girls as idol, are a popular idea. But this TV reality show just formed a new girl group, but it's
singing.
No, but it's by all these actresses who are already established. And then they kind of reverse to people's in general opinion about what an idol should be. They're not just like going with what the fan want them to be, like nice and like gentle or like very girly. They just like very powerful, very bossy, be whatever they want to be.
Kind of like it's probably different, but like like Jingxing is pretty crazy. She's just herself.
Yeah,
right?
They're just being honest themselves. They're like, we're tired. I'm hungry. I need to eat. I don't want to.
不要装.
对.
Don't act. Don't pretend.
Yeah, it's like. Because this idea of Asian girls, they're always like, oh, this young, skinny, white. That's like the general judgment about Asian beauty. Yeah. But they're kind of just like...
In China, you mean?
Challenge
or
that.
In the West?
In China.
In China, okay.
Yeah,
the media, it does that too, right? Like we got so many like Douyin, we got Billy, all
media.
this stuff. And then it's like every image you see of a woman, it's not about this intrinsic beauty, this intrinsic capability that I can be a filmmaker, I can be anything. I can be a taekwondo, gold medalist. It's just like, this is how I look and this is how, and it's from the perspective of males a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the show is very like, you can say political correct in a way that kind of shows an idol can be a powerful woman that challenge what the traditional idea of an Asian beauty would
That's
be.
great.
So politically incorrect. I mean, it's kind of like challenging. So it's not even politically correct.
Well, it's challenging. Well, it's challenging the norm. I think politically correct in the sense of from a Western standard, because, I mean, one thing that you see in China, the standard of beauty, or even the standard of image, right, for a female. I mean, you see all these young people, females, that are like, changing the way they look, whether physically or through photoshopping and whatever, to hit a certain type of beauty standard. They live a certain life where they think that that's what an attractive woman should live like. And it becomes like the standard that people strive for.
Yeah.
But what Fei was saying is that, why does that have to be the standard?
Exactly.
You know, because there's a lot of different options you can live by. It's like almost saying like, oh, as a guy, we have to be like muscular and buff and sporty and
We do.
and that's it, you know. But
woman needs to be like that too, to be more healthy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's crazy time we live in, right? Because like I feel like as more and more people become open-minded, because you know, we become a lot more we have a lot more access to different countries and cultures due to the internet, due to, you know, flight and all that stuff. But it's almost we're almost like also regressing in a way. You know, because if you have so much exposure and stuff like that, that all this becomes even more narrow.
Yeah.
You know, that standard becomes more narrow.
Well, because our platforms have become very exponential,
Yeah.
especially in China, where when you see the people or the channels at the top of the rankings, you're talking about millions, hundreds of millions. Yeah. So an image like, you know, Winnie the Pooh, right? So before, like, you had to get this VHS tape from your uncle who was studying in the US and bring it back, and it's very organic. Now, an image can be propagated to hundreds of millions of people,
exponentially,
and it's like brainwashing almost.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
so
that's a good point.
a good message can propagate really, really quickly,
Yeah.
but a distorted message can be propagated extremely fast as well. And it's very, very dangerous what's happening with social media right now, because you watched Winnie the Pooh on a VHS tape that was probably fairly not great quality. And as you watched it, the image became more and more blurry, but it was the message. It was the true core value of that you got over and over and over. Now everything is glossy, polished. You're going to see it for 5 seconds. It's engineered to hack into your brain and this distortion and to distort your brain so that you see these things.
I think the internet is actually, I don't know if it's like actually speed up the revolution, so-called, or slow down the revolution. It's like you have a hotline of something that's super like wrong, and then people all criticize on it, be angry about it for like 3 days, and then it's being replaced by something else. And then your anger just like gone. Nobody worries about it. Nobody like remembers about it, but the victims still suffer. You know? But I feel like that's what I felt a couple years ago. I feel frustrated that every day there's a saying that you go online every day, you feel like we're going to start a revolution, but you walk out of your apartment, it's still nothing new under the sun. But I think especially after the COVID situation, a lot of things has been changed. During our quarantine time, there is actually one of my friends, she's part of this volunteer group. They are volunteering to gather material and donations to get like sanity support for female workers in the front line, because they have to be in all these protective suits, but you've
Face
got
masks.
Yeah, but you have your period. You know, like when I have my period, you can't go to toilet. It's a very, very annoying thing. But there's very limited supplies of protection suits. So if you open it, if you go to the toilet, you're wasting one suit. So sometimes these women has to stay in the suit for 24 hours.
I didn't even think of that.
Their pee and blood are just messed all together, and then they are already in a very high chance of infection,
And very stressed out.
in low immune system. And then a lot of the hospital, because the leaders are just think, oh, you know, sanity pads or tampons are not important as important as protection suits. So these are not qualified to take the express line to be delivered to the front line.
That's the role of empathy, and it's also the role of understanding the level of detail. And so you have to have leaders that are extremely empathetic, that listen and learn, and then know that level of detail. So when you implement a policy for, let's say, 10,000, 100,000 people, you're doing it in the right way. And it's very tricky, right? Because if you're a leader managing 100,000 people, you know, you're supposed to be vision and purpose and understand the big picture. You actually have to be able to zoom into the micro detail, so that when you implement your broader vision, you're not doing the wrong vision for 50% of the staff or more, right? If you add nurses in there, it's
Yeah, because like if you only use logic to make your decision, then logically the protective suit is the most expensive. It's also the lowest quantity, so you got to do everything you can to protect that amount that's used to its fullest. But only if you add in empathy can you really understand that the front line consists of a huge number of women that have to deal with certain circumstances that are beyond what a typical male would go through.
Yeah.
And that you need to have that empathy in order to help cater to that and to their cause and to what they're trying to do and support them.
But most of the leaders are male. Yeah. So actually this whole support action was started by women because only women cares about women that way. Until we have more women in the upper positions, we can have more empathy in these strategies.
Or if you have more,
Men who are things for women.
or we can break down these biases and we can say, hey, let's step back and say, okay, doesn't matter if you're male or female. What we want is people who understand people.
Exactly.
And how we were talking about EQ and God, like the role of empathy and emotional intelligence and understanding people has never ever been more important. Yeah. And, I'm kind of thinking, and Fei, like, so going back to sort of like your passion, I think we talked about a lot of things in terms of the lens of, your learnings and like unconscious bias and all this stuff. So tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you're working on, and in this new world, what messages you like are trying to bring to your audiences that will help people be more empathetic and understanding, because it's life and death. It's life and death. It's not like empathy is like, oh, you make me feel good, you make me feel bad. It's like if people are not empathetic, our leadership is not empathetic, people will die. So I'm just curious, like some of the projects that you're working on upcoming, like what's your vision and what are you working on?
I'm currently working as cinematographer and director at the same time. So as cinematographer, I do commercials and movies. So for commercial, it's actually an interesting time because when that TV show become popular, commercial industry always smell what's the most trending thing. So I actually got reached out by a lot of projects. They're like, we want more female in this team. We want a female cinematographer because we're filming, or they're like, we're filming the subjects that's more about girl power. I support that. And I would bring my team, my first camera assistant is also a woman, very strong, powerful woman. She's so little, but she's so powerful.
Joy.
Like I would
Joy.
love, yeah.
Shout out to Joy.
Shout out to Joy.
Joy.
I would love, I'm just happy like these things are happening, but I'm also afraid that I don't want these things to turn into something just for commercial.
Like a gimmick almost, right?
Exactly. So I feel like there is a fine line that I have to be careful about.
It is a fine line.
Right. Yeah. So that's about commercial. And then for film, I'm doing a feature documentary, but we also have narrative parts involved. It's about young kids in Chengdu in a coming of age, living in an underground culture, versus the city is growing from the second tier to first tier. And then we also have a lot of cool girls involved. And then there's also LGBT elements about, like how you explore your personality, how you explore your sexuality, all these kind of things. We try to stay objective, and then we try to connect the emotions, not only about young kids, it's also about human. That's a project that I'm doing right now. And as a director, I'm developing stories I always say that I wanted to do stories that's honest, but it's about ordinary people's extraordinary life. Because I feel like every day you walk on the street, you don't see, you pass so many faces, but you don't know what's the story behind it. But individual struggle, it's individual, but it's also common. Like everyone can connect to it. And as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I think that's what my life is worth for. Like after I die, what I leave in this world, maybe somebody sees this story and then something change, or they feel something. I don't know.
That's so powerful. Where do you think that maybe this is a question for both of you guys, but I feel like, wow, this is all so powerful, like where we're moving. where do you think things are going to go in the next 10 or 20 years? Like, do you think there's going to be more and more opportunities to share your ideas, to share your positive influence? Where do you think, things will kind of end up in the next few years?
I don't know. I think it's hard to say because the world changes so fast.
Are there other Feis in China right now? Do you have like?
I think there are. I think there are better Feis, like people who are better than me, who are stronger than me. I feel like I learn from them all the time. I got inspired because I get scared. But when I get scared, if there's a place I can tell them that I'm scared, then then the next time there's another girl come to me, be like, "Hey, Fei, I don't know what to do. Like, I want to be a DP. I want to be a cinematographer, but do I need to talk in a voice, make me sound more like a man? Can I wear makeup on set? Do I need to comb my hair?" And I can tell her, I don't have an answer because these are my questions too, but we can be scared together.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? Because from my perspective, because obviously I said we worked together before. So from my perspective, I mean, on set, she's very clear and like, she's not like, she doesn't come across as scared, And so it's interesting because it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know. And do you have like a support system or a trusting like group of people to share that with? I think that's really important. And you also made that clear that when you're on set and you're, being professional, you are professional.
Because I need to do my job.
Yeah, because you got to do your job, And so that fear, there is no place for that fear. Yeah. There's only a place to move forward and do the job.
Exactly.
Which is interesting because I feel like, just going with what you're saying, like you have other females coming up to you and being like, okay, well, is it okay to wear makeup? Is blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, at the end of the day, right, you do you, right? And like, it's okay to have these questions. We could talk about it offline, but like when you're on set, that's the important thing. It's not if you're wearing makeup. Yeah. The important thing is, are you shooting a great image? Or if you're directing, are you clear with your story? If you're a gaffer, are you clear with how to do your lighting? If you're an editor, are you clear on how to do your job?
Exactly. I think it's a separate thing. It's more about like, but going down to the root of these discussion, it's all about being you. You're allowed to be who you are. You're allowed to have the emotions that you're feeling. You're allowed to be true to yourself at any moment, at many minutes. And that's the only way that I can be professional because I'm doing what I love. I don't want to be worried about how people look at me. I just want to focus on my job. That's how I feel at the moment. But there are times that I'm not sure. So I can be not sure at these moments. But the time comes, okay, I have to work. I'll go work. And then action kills fear,
Yeah.
That's a good one. Action kills fear.
That's actually what I've been told when I was in school by another woman. So
Yeah.
That's a great line.
It's so powerful. I've said the word powerful. Joe Rogan introduces his guests as, and he has like lots of MMA fighters and, like lots of men. I kind of digress. But Joe Rogan is a very popular, for our listeners in China, Joe Rogan is the most popular podcaster in the world, but particularly in the US. And he's also Justin's idol.
Yes.
And but he's great. I mean, we model, like Justin models himself after, we call Justin the Joe Rogan of China. He's a great man. He introduces each of his guests as the great and powerful, so and so. But he has a lot of men on the show. Fei, you are powerful, and you taught me a lot today. An absolute incredible amount. You taught me. I've been taking notes all along. I'm going to listen to this podcast multiple times. But it's okay to be scared. Everyone is scared. This is human.
Yes.
This is absolutely human. The question is, how do you handle adversity? How do you handle challenge? And, by some accounts, like women probably, or, girls in the film industry may face bigger challenges than guys even in the MMA and fighting. And so how do you deal with your own emotions? Can you deal with having a bad day? And so it's really, really powerful. And I don't think if you're a guy, you don't have to find the biggest, most powerful, muscular dude to say, how do you become a strong man? You can actually go to a female who's overcome and who's done incredible things and learn more from that girl. And so it is not judging a book by its cover. It's just connecting with people, understanding them, hearing their story, letting them express themselves, and saying, what can I learn from this? And like, you've taught me more than, you know, a lot of much physically bigger and more menacing people. And I'm absolutely so inspired. And I think, you know, I want to, it makes me want to be a little bit different as well, to interact with people.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't take credit for all these things. I think all these credit goes to people who supported me and then give me help. Like when I come back to Shanghai, I'm like, how am I going to do this? You know, I don't know anybody. I don't know how to, you know, I don't have any contacts. So I would reach out to other great cinematographer in the industry in town and be like, hey, dude, I'm here new. Do you have do you have anyone that you can recommend to me? Like, I need a good crew. I need to know people. And then there are people who are so selflessly would share his contact that he probably took so long to collect. He would just share it to me immediately without any hesitation. And I think this is important to support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got I work with people on set, and then there are like gaffers who even like PAs or soundmen who will recommend me for other jobs. I'm just flattered. I feel very blessed that way.
Yeah, I think that you know, like, being macho doesn't mean courage. Masculinity doesn't mean strength, but giving, sharing, and vulnerability is really true power. And no single person has ever won a war.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, the fact that and I don't want to generalize, but I think that females like yourself are able to draw upon a bigger power, right? Draw upon the strength of a collective group of people that can, you know, do something. That's very, very powerful. And I think that is a strength, and that's a strength that men should learn from. That, because men are kind of like, I don't need maps. I don't need to ask people where I'm going. No, I can do 50 more push-ups. I'm strong, right?
Yeah, the stereotypical macho man.
Stereotypical doesn't mean strength. And I think that you can define the next generation of powerful people.
Wow. That's
it's
a
true.
lot of compliment.
Well, it's true. It's true. What Eric's saying is true.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is really interesting. But kind of to wind things down a little bit. Okay. So you've got, let's say, very soon, a big budget. You're going to call the shots. You can do whatever you want. You have the team you want. What message do you want to tell?
Wait, what do you mean?
Sorry. I tried to make that all exciting. I thought I was being clever.
It's like,
Okay. So imagine a situation where you have a massive budget. Okay. This is the powerful Fei. You call the shots. You've got like hundreds of men and women working for you. You've got a massive budget. You know, the government has approved your content. What story would you tell? And, you know, what message do you want to share with, who's your audience, and what message do you want to share?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because we're pitching right now.
I wanted to tell stories about, I want to tell a comedy that you watch but you cry. Because I believe comedy comes from tragedy. And I believe the most powerful tragedy comedy comes from everyday life. I want every audience will be able to relate it. I want their heart that's so tired of struggling every day could have been comfort a little bit when they watch this film. Although I don't know what I'm making yet.
Well, I know
I think that's the goal.
I know who could be like some really good comedic characters. Howie Lamb, Eric Shang, Justin Yang. I think we could be
the next big thing.
The Three Stooges.
Pretty much the Three Stooges.
Three 傻逼
the three Stooges. The Stooges, yeah.
薪水好就可以了. If we get a good salary, I'm cool.
It's like 三宝大闹好莱坞. You guys are like 三宝大闹上海滩.
You know what we should do? Like a lightning round at the end of these shows. Like favorite movie, favorite food.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, favorite movie.
It's hard. I'm a Libra. Howie knows it. Like I can't make decisions. But favorite movie, I like Charlie Chaplin's.
Ooh, okay. Which one should I watch?
You should watch all of them.
Okay.
She's going old school.
Okay.
She's going old school with Charlie Chaplin.
All right. Okay. Favorite short film set in New York.
Fade.
He's trying to set you up for that.
Fade. Good. Fade, guys. Everyone on Vimeo.
Made
okay,
by Howie
Yoku.
Lame.
Okay.
Did you just call me Howie Lame?
Howie Lame.
You just call me Howie Lame.
Howie Lame.
Oh God. Freudian slip.
Freudian slip.
Okay.
Oops.
Next restaurant that you're going to go to in Shanghai and sort of pre-plan.
Oh my God, this is hard. Let me pull out my 大众点评 and take a look. I don't know, actually.
Number one biggest struggle you had to overcome in your life?
How to decide what to eat on the menu.
That's a fucking struggle. Because I feel the same way.
That's how Howie and I bonded.
Yeah. Like when we go out and we're like, we're going to order some food. Like, what do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? We finally get to a place. What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat?
30 minutes later, we still can't decide it. It's very hard. It's like we're on set. We're like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, on
Let's do
set,
this, do
it's like
that.
decisions are made. Yeah.
Immediately we get off set, we can't decide what to eat.
Do you believe in astrology like that, though? Because we're both Libras.
I do. I think it's a Libra thing. I think Libra wants everything to be
What,
perfect.
are you October also?
Yeah, I'm October.
October what?
9.
Yeah, we're like a couple days
9
apart.
and 12?
Yeah,
We're going to celebrate.
That's what we say in the past 3
Oh,
years.
we're celebrating. We should get the horoscopes of every guest
Yeah.
and do a calendar.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great. What about you?
I'm a Pisces.
Oh.
And don't tell me that I'm romantic. Okay.
神经病 Pisces.
Yeah, 神经病 no 脑子坏透了. Okay. So, what message do you want to leave with our listeners?
Yeah. What do you want them to take away?
I'll let them decide it on their own.
Ooh.
I don't want to put anything in anybody's head. I think everyone has the right to decide what they want.
Wow.
I think that's a good general summary of what we've been talking about today, right?
It's
Okay.
also very Libra, very balanced.
Okay. What's the most popular podcast platform in this part of the world in China?
Podcast platform
Yeah,
or
what's like 最
podcast.
流行的 podcast platform 平台?
I listen to I listen to things on Spotify.
Spotify.
But I don't think that's in general
Isn't it
popular
blocked in
one.
China?
I think Ximalaya would
Ximalaya?
be more
Okay.
popular. Like my mom listened to Ximalaya.
Really? Is she a fan of the
Maybe your
Honest
mom
Drink?
needs to listen to the Honest Drink.
She was. I will tell her she's studying English right now. She's 60. She started studying English 2 years
Wow.
ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll tell her to listen to the Honest
Would you-
Drink.
would
Mama
you-
Fei, Mama Fei.
Would you recommend?
Shout out to Mama Fei.
Would you recommend, people like trying to get familiar with English to listen to the Honest Drink?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
As long as our English is good enough.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do more Chinese stuff
Yeah.
because I think we want to be a little bit more bilingual, right?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do want to do more Chinese stuff.
Well, you can talk like the Chinese English mix. The way Howie always say.
其实我们应该讲
Okay.
更多中文。
真的是的。
那我们结束就是用中文来结束吧。
好的。
Okay. For the American listeners, what Howie just said was that we're gonna end in Chinese. Okay. One more question. Can I ask
讲中文啊。
one more question. 再来一个问题。
啊，你说。
Okay. What film should we
用
all...
中
讲中文啊。
Okay. All right. Let me think. Oh, my Chinese is... Okay. 给我们推荐一部电影吧。
Oh my god, this is hard.
啊，我听不懂你在用什么语言？
Yeah. Recommend a film for us.
听不懂。
这个很难，我想一下。
This is difficult. She's got to think about it.
你最近没有看电影吗？
You haven't seen any movies lately?
最近
Why you
太忙， 最近太忙了。
I've been busy lately.
我可以说我最喜欢的电影。
Yes.
我最喜欢的电影是奉俊昊拍的《杀人回忆》。
哦
Memories of
我还没有看。
Murder by 奉俊昊。
Yeah.
Like 奉俊昊 won
那是
Oscar
那
this
是
year。
那我知道
Right.
但是那个是老一点的电影嘛。
对，这个是他第一部出名的电
Wait,
影。
who is this?
The guy who did Parasite. 那个导演。
I haven't even seen Parasite. So what's the film called?
Memories of Murder。
Memories of Murder. Okay, I'm gonna watch
中文
that.
杀人回忆。
杀人回忆. Okay. 杀人回忆. I've never killed anyone, so hopefully none of our listeners have killed
哎，你
anyone.
不是说这个导演是你最爱的吗？
对啊，这个是我最喜欢的导演。他10年前还没有拿奥斯卡的时候，我就觉得
他是哪里人呢？
是最棒的。
韩国。
韩国人呢？韩国人。
韩国人
I'm sorry.
呢？
No, that's kind of no. This
你又来了。
sensitive. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. 那 Eric 你呢？你最爱的电影
你
是什么？
最爱的电影是什么？
I never left.
那他最爱的电影是 Titanic。
哦
No, not
，Titanic 我也很喜
No,
欢。
not Titanic. No, like what's this impersonation? I'm not gonna.
But do you like
I should have
Titanic?
never left in the Santino.
Tarantino.
Tarantino? You said?
Tarantino?
What?
Do you like
What's going on?
Tarantino?
I love Tarantino, but that's not. I can do Tarantino.
Are you trying to be the Godfather?
Yeah, a little bit. Tarantino. You want Tarantino?
Yeah, be the Godfather.
Ezekiel 25:17, and the path of the righteous should be beset on all sides by the iniquities and selfish of evil men. Blessed is he who shepherds his brothers through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper. And I will strike down with great vengeance and furious anger at those who attempt to poison my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I strike down upon thee. Sorry.
Eric loves to quote Pulp Fiction, and
It's
that
amazing.
was the most amazing, not amazing Samuel L.
That's
Jackson
terrible. That's
impersonation I ever heard.
We're cutting that. We're cutting that. It's ridiculous. Too much Bowmore.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
So good.
Let's cheers, man.
All
Cheers.
right.
Thanks for coming on the show,
Yeah.
Fei.
Thank
It was
you.
wonderful.
Thank you,
Names.
guys.
Names.
Thanks for having me.
My name is Howie.
我叫 Eric.
我叫
Justin 不在。
Justin 不在，那我当 Justin 吗？Hey guys, I'm Justin.
What up, everybody?
What's up, everybody?
Welcome to the Honest Drink. If you like this, feel free to subscribe, rate, and comment.
I am the next big thing.
Ooh.
That's what Justin said.
Justin's gonna listen to this. He'll be like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
We're putting this in. All
No,
right.
totally.
Okay.
Cheers,
totally.
guys.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Till next time.
The next time.
What a fucking great show.
And,
But as the sun will see